Well, we are very fortunate now to welcome back onto XEP the legendary game designer and creator of Gears of War, Cliff Bleszinski. Cliff, obviously, we've got you here to chat about your reactions to the trailer shown at the Xbox Game Showcase for Gears of War E-Day. But before we do, how are things, my friend?
Things are good, man. I'm just noodling on a new game idea, actually. That could be a game or an IP, as well as continuing to figure out where Scrapper's going. And I'm dipping my toes into the world of stand-up comedy, which it turns out is really freaking hard. Um, like, my wife and I go to a stand-up show nearly once a week. We're at the point where like we go to the local club Good Nights, which is owned by Helium, and they gave us like this little VIP package with T-shirts and tchotchkes and stickers and a VIP badge. So whenever I go to a show now, I often get seated in the front row and I wear the VIP badge. And the comedians sometimes call me out on it, like, "Would you just come from Comic-Con or something?" I'm like, "No, it's VIP for Good Nights." They're like, "What is that? What does that give you?" I'm like, "I don't know yet. I'm still figuring this out. Do I get like a free drink once a month or something? Like, do I get like a little action in the green room? I don't know, So it's been an interesting world. My next tattoo is going to be on Sunday. It's going to be the Michelangelo quote, "I'm still learning," because learning, restaurants, Broadway, video games, stand-up comedy, writing memoir, freaking comic books, all of it. It's been a fascinating journey, and I'm just getting going.
It's wild to think. Last time we had you on, right as Scrapper was releasing, and your memoir had just come out. You done Broadway. You tried your venture, in video games multiple times, and we'd seen you in Gears and Unreal, and it was just you've touched on so many elements of career and entertainment, and you're not even 50 yet, and that's wild to think about.
Well, I mean, you look at George Miller still making movies, and he's like mid to late 70s, right? And it bums me out that Furiosa didn't do better at the box office, because even though it was a little bit long, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think Anya Taylor-Joy is a freaking goddess. She can do no wrong. She's utterly talented and charming and beautiful. But yeah, I think my brother is he's learning electric guitar right now. He's 4 years older than me. And I think the way that you can kind of help fend off dementia as one ages is to keep learning, keep those synapses firing and keep, digesting, new information. And, for me, I've always been a bit of a media slut. I like, TV, film, music, reading, everything in between. And, my wife sometimes is like, "How did you know that, this person directed, how did you know George Miller directed Happy Feet?" I'm like, "I don't know. I read every issue of Entertainment Weekly for 20 years, And it's just, we're in this world to absorb data and to learn from everything around us and to empathize with others that aren't necessarily like us in order to understand their plights and what may be going on in their lives."
Yeah, no, it's one of the things that's, I think, neat about your career is that you do follow so many elements of entertainment, and it informs a lot of your decisions, good, bad, everywhere in between. And that's why
Well, I
I think
mean, you look at
learn.
what a film buff Kojima is,
Mhm.
and you can see those sensibilities, being applied to his games. And then, he's at the point where he's, hanging out with Norman Reedus and Guillermo del Toro, right?
Mhm.
Because you'd find that, if you just make video games, that's cool. But then, all the directors want to make video games. All the video game designers want to be film directors,
Mhm.
because you look at the Venn diagram of all the different forms of entertainment, and there's a surprising amount of overlap there.
Yeah. No doubt. You're absolutely right. It's something I've noticed more and more, particularly after The Last of Us, Neil Druckmann. You play his game and you see a lot of film elements, and then they go into the making the TV show, and you're right. It makes good sense.
Oh, and just the Last of Us was great. Fallout was great also. We're finally hitting, I believe, our stride in regards to the golden era of video game adaptations to screen, and I'm excited for it. And I hope the Gears one turns out well.
Yeah, I was gonna say fingers crossed, because as Gears aficionados will tell you, it's been a long road to hopefully see Gears on silver or big screen. We just want to see it.
Well, we had at one point we had Stu Beatty, who wrote Collateral, on board. He and I went and hung out in LA, saw movies together and everything. And he taught me one of the golden rules of screenwriting is often, you want to see a character that does something at the end of the movie that you couldn't expect at the beginning, right? Hero's journey, right? And then we had Chris Morgan, who's now the lord of all things Fast and the Furious. And he was working on it for a while when we had Len Wiseman attached to direct. And Len couldn't wrap his head around the fact that how are the locusts smart enough to be carrying guns? Why are they carrying guns? And I'm like, dude, we'll get there, and that's the thing is it goes back to, when I was working on Gears 1 and I wanted to put the locust from the underground. And one of the programmers was like, I don't buy it. I'm like, why not? He's like, how did they get there? I'm like, that's part of the freaking mystery. We'll figure that out, which they did. In fact, explained finally in Gears 5.
It was definitely something to watch for sure. Now I'm curious. We've got you here to talk about the trailer for Gears of War E-Day, where they do some of the explaining that you were just talking about. But Cliff, before we do that, you've been on the other end of a trailer debut. You've been on the other end of what it's like to be on the cusp of releasing your content to the world, letting everybody see it, pick it apart. What's going through the minds of the developers the day of, the day before, as they put together the trailer, all of that?
They're probably anxious as hell, honestly. It's one of those things that you labor so hard on this product is your baby. And even though we're in the era of games as service, for better or for worse, I found that like back when we would just release a game, maybe do a little DLC, there was actually, it's not of course the same exact thing, but it was almost like a postpartum vibe. Like, okay, we're work, it's out. And then it's like, now what? Right. So it's kind of a weird vibe. But I think, for everybody up at the coalition, it has to be a great moment because, they're, as I said in my tweet, they're giving the people what they want. I think, you look at, JD and Dell and the whole cast of 4 and 5, and they're good characters, but it seems like from me sitting way back, they didn't resonate quite as hard as the original Delta Squad. And for me, it reminds me of, being an 80s kid, since I'm freaking old, the Transformers movie that came out in the 80s, right? And they're like, okay, we need a new toy line. Let's just kill off a bunch of characters. And I'm sitting in the theater like, what the heck? And, killing Optimus Prime, like, come on, man. And it kind of felt like that, and like, there's a reason why, the Bumblebee movie worked, because, you have, Optimus in there, and you kind of want to appeal to the base, as they say in politics, but also expand your audience. So have a good mix of the old and the new. I mean, Marcus showing back up, Baird showing back up was a good idea with 4 and 5. But I think killing Anya was like an Alien 3 style of mistake where they killed off like Newt and everybody, but that's neither here nor there. So my reactions to the trailer, honestly, it felt weird because I actually got goosebumps from something I was instrumental in creating. And I think they played the Gears base perfectly. And upon watching it for the third time, I put 2 and 2 together that when Marcus is struggling with that drone, and again, Coalition, it's Locust, not locusts, just like it's Lego, not Legos. To see Marcus struggling like that, but the music, I was like, wait a minute. And I rewatched the Maria scene with Dom and Maria, and I was like, they've reused that music basically, which, to kind of call back to that, even if the fans didn't realize it initially. And then, the little few chords of Mad World that kicked in right as, Dom rescued Marcus, which kind of dovetails it back into Dom's sacrifice in Gears of War 3. I just got goosebumps telling you that right now. And I know this is borderline PG-13, but it feels a little bit masturbatory to catch feels from something that you were instrumental in creating when it's been passed off. And at the end of the day, Gears was my baby, and it's good to know that, my baby's in good hands.
It certainly felt like it. And to hear Mad World once again, to your point, to feel the emotion involved, I know I felt something at hearing those tones, and in subsequent rewatches, you're right. They did play the Gears bass so well. I mean, no words were spoken in the entire trailer, and yet I feel like we were all part of Marcus's struggle there.
I mean, the fact that it was a sloppy fight, right? And there's like the little Easter eggs in the background. You see the newspaper that says the war's over, again referring to the Pendulum Wars. You see the welcome home banner, and the police stand by, indicating that some crap's going down.
Mhm.
And the fact that he grabs the TV and smashes the drone with it. That better be an in-game move, by the way. TV smashing in the head is the new curb stomp.
Yeah, I hope
Um,
so.
and there's people are like, well, are Baird and Cole going to be in there? And it's like Marcus and Dom didn't meet Baird and Cole until Gears 1, which was like 14 years after E-Day.
Mhm.
So what I'm suspecting is there might be, kind of a separate side plot
Mhm.
of, Baird and Cole doing their thing. And then, I suspect that the first chapter is actually going to depict the Pendulum Wars, because players have wanted that. And people don't realize Pendulum Wars was just an idea I pulled out of my butt on a random Tuesday, right?
Mhm.
It was one of those things that's like, okay, understanding what I knew about Star Wars, where Lucas, referenced the Clone Wars.
Mhm.
I don't know if he necessarily knew what the Clone Wars were at that time, but the thing I've learned about IP development is sometimes, throw an idea in there, even if you don't know what it is, we'll figure it out later. And
Mhm.
that's the thing. But at the same time, you don't want to get into the pyramid scheme of storytelling that J.J. Abrams did with Lost, where it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm going to answer one question, but I'm going to ask three more, and then at the end of
Mhm.
the day, during the finale, you're going to be left holding the bag. Like, in my opinion, that's not necessarily the best way to do IP. It's okay to leave a couple things hanging. Like with Scrapper, in issue 1, the cats have all vanished. And then later on, maybe the cats will come back. And then we'll
Mhm.
see maybe in the future, after, in issues 7 through whatever, maybe the cats get weaponized like Scrapper is, right? Like things like that. So you gotta find a way to kind of craft it and direct it in the right way. And the key also is to find the right partners to work with when you're developing IP.
Mhm.
Whomever is creatively responsible over at Coalition, I think, has really kind of put themselves in a great situation. I mean, even the way they went back to Gears of War, and I saw it's just Gears of War, and then boom, E-Day kind of reminds me of the logo from The Boys, which comes back, I think, tomorrow. Just the way it's like boom, The Boys, and it's like,
Mhm.
and then you can see the reaction videos, people like, oh, geez, like that kind of thing. Just you want to get gums flapping, you want to get people talking on YouTube and Twitch. That's the new world order in which we live.
Mhm. Well, I mean, you brought up a lot of stuff, much of it, many of which I have questions about. One of our listeners, Chipotle Bear, asked a question about when you were writing the first Gears, and to your point of and referencing, George Lucas and Star Wars, the Clone Wars. When you worked on the first one, did you have an idea or the possibility that prequels could be made in your mind, or was in your mind at the time Gears of War was the first Gears?
Gears of War was the first Gears. However, there's a reason why we set it years after E-Day.
Hmm.
And, in the opening cinematic, we had, the scene of the people at like the outdoor cafe, very, Paris, and then boom, Locust, surprise attack, very much
Hmm.
similar to Pearl Harbor, right?
Hmm.
And if you haven't had a chance to watch that World War II documentary on Netflix, it's fantastic. It's just all the footage is, colorized, color corrected, remastered. It's just you feel like it was just filmed almost yesterday. Um, but the thing is the one of my favorite books I may have mentioned last time we chatted is called Hitmakers, and it basically says you want to make something cool, take things that are familiar but twist them. And
Hmm.
so Gears of War was always a thinly veiled metaphor for World War II, and a statement of the fact that war is just dumb. The fact that like Russia's still going after Ukraine. I'm like, really? You look at what's going on with Israel and Palestine. It's just like, come on, it's 2024. Can't people just like get their stuff together and put their weapons and drones and grenades down, because it never ends well. The cycle just continues. History is doomed to repeat itself, and Gears was very much a statement on that.
I see those references and those metaphors as I play and replay the first game and the franchise overall. You mentioned the namesake returning, Gears of War, and I think that kind of illustrates that exact metaphor. It's no longer, or it's not Gears as it was in Gears 5. It's Gears of War. When you saw that, did that resonate with you in any way, shape, or form?
Initially, when they just went with just Gears, I was like, okay, that's kind of like how Grand Theft Auto can just use that font and do like 6, and everyone's like, I know that.
Hmm.
But Gears is big, but Grand Theft Auto is exponentially bigger, right? And,
Hmm.
and GTA can get away with that. To go with just Gears, in hindsight, I think may have been a little bit cocky,
Hmm.
kind of like a certain game designer who was loved and hated throughout his career. And then I think just it's basically what, like I said in my tweet, it's going back to basics. And I'm just curious to see, like, if they're going to do executions. I've actually read an interview with one of the creatives over the coalition, because I surmise that, okay, they're probably going to go with the origin of the chainsaw lancer, because there's going to be a cutscene where, like, these creatures, their skin's too tough. We need to find a way to get through it, and hopefully there's going to be like a Evil Dead style, like where it gets put together.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know in the fiction who actually made the Lancer in the damn first place.
Baird.
Was it? Of course, it was Baird.
Yep.
Well, Baird was always the a-hole engineer, right?
Yeah.
That's why he wound up making DBs, Damon Baird, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. And and thank God we're not gonna have any more robots. The Gears fans do not want robots, people.
You are correct. You are very correct. Let me just note that. Now, let me ask you this. When Gears first came out, you guys really touched on it being dark, nightmarish, violent, gritty. For the sequel, the theme, and I can remember you vividly saying bigger, better, and more badass in one of the first like documentaries Xbox Live shared. Gears 3, perhaps more into the bigger, better, more badass than horror. But it seems like with E-Day, we're going back to those franchise roots. Did you pick up on that tone as well?
Absolutely. I think as the franchise went on with 1, 2, and 3, we'd let a little bit more color bleed into the palette. And I think, that made it more accessible to a wider crowd, but it also kind of lost some of the stylization. I've seen people in comment threads, because I hate myself, and I read the comments even though I shouldn't. And it's like Gears wasn't a horror game. It's like Gears had elements of horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the Berserker coming at you. A lot of people basically crap their pants. You look at, the wretches kind of being teased in, your first encounter with Locust, like all of it. The corpser, running away from that when you're as you're exiting the prison in the first Gears. The idea has always been that the Hollow is kind of like the oceans on Earth, right? They still discover multiple species at multiple depths in the ocean to this day, right? And we've been exploring the ocean for how long? It's like one of those things that the Hollow is meant to be this ecosystem, kind of like the whole Hollow Earth theory, and basically how, like, anything could have evolved down there. And then you have these locusts that were these outcasts that were sent, fled underground, and then evolved in their own way, and turned out they became this kind of military force, and they were ready to seek their vengeance and reclaim the surface.
You are getting a lot of love in chat for that Berserker fight. And I've seen Mad Mo and Trophy Room, many others saying that they are on Xbox because of Gears of War. So you did something special with that, for sure.
Well, that was the goal. Was Microsoft, didn't have a Halo at the time. Halo was kind of the flagship franchise for Xbox. And Microsoft came to us. We had Unreal Engine 3 coming online. And they're like, hey, do you have something for us? And I was like, we just might. And a lot of people bought an Xbox 360 because of Gears. Of course, we actually cost Microsoft a lot of money when Tim Sweeney went to them and said, no, this thing needs more RAM. It's not going to be enough in order to pull off what we want. And that's the thing is, Microsoft has an interesting new strategy these days where they're trying to be the Netflix of video games. It seems like they're gunning for less hardware centric content, and just kind of, Halo remaster is going to be on the new PlayStation, right? Like, it's crazy to think about, like, how the whole console wars thing is over. I think, like, when I saw Sonic and Mario together in a game, I was like, oh my God, my childhood is either like destroyed or improved. I don't know. I'm confused. And so that's the thing is, everybody's, maturing and realizing that, you want everybody playing your stuff as much as possible on any platform, and be agnostic to whatever platform it's on.
I fully agree with you. I think the idea of Gears bringing people to Xbox is going to kind of happen once again, as we're kind of reliving old times with Call of Duty and Gears of War and Fable being kind of big pillars for Xbox. But it is going to be playable in other places, and we are likely to see it on multiple platforms, and more people playing is clearly the strategy.
Well, then you get crossplay, right? Because the last thing you want is to look at the stats online of how many players are playing the game, And what happens is there's this chicken and egg situation that happens with certain games, where players will check how many players are playing. And if not a lot of players are playing, they won't play it. Right. And then dead game. It's a meme at this point. And so it becomes the whole equivalent of like, yo, there's a party going on at Jimmy's. Who's there? He's like, only a few people. Then I'm not going. Like, you got to get that snowball rolling down the hill. And again, that comes into influencers and YouTubers, Twitch streamers, TikTokers. I freaking hate TikTok. But it's one of those things that, you need to get that critical mass. And by being, as Netflix realized, Netflix is like, screw it, we're going to be on everything. And, step 3, profit, right?
Yeah. Well, Trophy Room asks a question. They're a PlayStation podcast, one of the best out there. They say, how would you feel seeing Gears in the form of a collection or whatnot on PlayStation? As the creator and someone who had to argue Tim Sweeney and the Xbox brass to get you that RAM, does it bother you in any way to see it on another platform, or is it more celebratory that more people?
I don't see why it would bother me. I mean, the more the merrier. The more people who play the experience that we work so hard on that get to enjoy it and become fans, the better. Maybe you'll get some PlayStation fans that get Gears of War tattoos because Gears of War tattoos became a big thing. And it's one of those things that I just think we're in the era of, eyeballs equals money. And so, Phil Spencer's a very savvy, charismatic businessman. He's a good dude. And I think he knows what he's doing, very much so. And, Game Pass is for the dime for dime is actually a really good value.
I fully agree. Fully agree. I'm going to loop us back to the trailer itself, because that's why you were kind enough to come on. But also, that horror vibe does take us back to the early days of Gears. Now, what I thought was interesting is that Marcus was fighting one locust drone, just one. And it was messy, as you said. It wasn't a swarm. It was a locust drone. And that locust drone was threatening. And that makes me feel like this is a monstrosity they were not prepared for. And it just touchstones on that early Gears vibe.
Well, I mean, Marcus, towards the end of Gears 3, just basically was just kind of like a killing machine where he's just like mowing through like hordes of drones. And the drones were no longer scary. They were cannon fodder at that point, even though they still had a lot of hit points, right? I'll never forget when my friend Randy Pitchford came out and played Gears 1. He's like, okay, I get what you're going for. You're making a grinder here. That's where active reload came in to make your bullets more powerful, and getting close, use the chainsaw, etc. And that's the thing is, I just love how sloppy the fight was, and the fact that you could tell Marcus was caught, off guard, right? And the fact that it's going to be an uphill fight for them. This is a completely new enemy. They're used to fighting squishy little humans in the Pendulum Wars. They're not used to these, creatures that have incredibly thick skin that are just intelligent savages. And it was just very compelling to see that. I want to see the motion capture behind the scenes of that, because it was very well choreographed. And then when Marcus finally gets a handle on things and realizes headshot, right? And then they have that close up shot of like the neck stump of the drone, reminding people like Gears is M-rated. Gears is gory. We're going to bring the gore as well. There's so many like multiple layers that they were saying with that trailer in a good way. And it's literally feels like a love letter to the core Gears fans, while also, reminding people that, this franchise it's big, it's out there. And, my brother told me one time that the best drug in the world is nostalgia. And I've had so many people with the games that I've worked on over the course of my career tell me, Jackrabbit was my childhood, Unreal Tournament was my childhood, Gears of War was my childhood. I think, if you play to that, you look at the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, right? And like so many of us grew up with the different eras of TMNT, and, all the way through the crappy Michael Bay ones, right? But still, like the 80s and 90s cartoon, with the animated version, it's the ones with the guys in the suit, the movies, right? Like nostalgia is powerful, and I think the people at the coalition of Microsoft are realizing that, and they're leaning into that.
Well, I mean, that brings me to my next question. Obviously, you have some strong attachments to Dom and Marcus. When you saw those heroes take center stage in that trailer, chills, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it goes back to the phrase that we used, brothers to the end,
Mhm.
right? And when you see that hand reach down, you're just like, oh, geez. And I still, to this day, once in a while, I'll go look up, Dom's sacrifice on YouTube, and or Dom putting down Maria, and I see that we made grown men cry, and that's the thing I always say is, guys, it's okay to cry. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean you're a little bitch. It means you're in touch with your feelings, and you're
Mhm.
less likely to get in fights at bars.
The you're absolutely right. Now, the story of Emergence Day, that's something that we've seen talked about. There's your scrapper. Uh,
Evie,
Also, shout out to Evie for the appropriate name.
come here, Evie. Come here. Come on up. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Now that's a good looking pup right there.
Can you see why we named her Evie?
I can. Quite appropriate.
All right. Can you deal with her? Thanks, son. Anyway, we were saying.
I was saying the story of Emergence Day, it's something that's been talked about in nearly every variant of Gears lore, comic book, novels, the games themselves. How monumental is the task they have ahead of them now to create the game of E-Day?
Well, the gameplay, of course, is the thing. But the thing is the E-Day has the potential for tons of set pieces. And I tweeted that, I better see a lot of civilians getting murked, right? Like, we have what I call the establishing character shot, right?
Mhm.
Like, when you're like, it goes back to Half-Life 2, when, the guard like knocks over the can, goes pick up the can, right? And you're like, oh, you're an a-hole. Like, I'm going to kill all of you, right?
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that, there's so many possibilities of just, showing the horrors of war. It's like every time you see an actual war, there's always the one AP photograph of like a bloody child's shoe in the
Mhm.
rubble, right? Like, for some reason, that's like a thing to show the horrors of war, right? And
Mhm.
I really hope that the horror isn't just, the locust. The horror is the fact that war is hell. I mean, it goes back to, you look at, the reason why like World War II, we could all get behind that. Like, yeah, screw Nazis, right? But you look at the Vietnam War, which was a whole bunch of BS, and it's one of those proxy wars,
Mhm.
and it wound up becoming massively unpopular because the word got out through the press. You look at the image of that poor girl whose clothes have been burnt off from napalm. You look at the My Lai massacre. You look at the monk self-immolating in the streets without batting an eyelash in order to protest the war. I'm not saying they need to go like directly in that direction, but whatever they can do, in my opinion, to depict the horrors of war itself, I think would be a really compelling direction. And yeah, they never contacted me to consult, so I'm giving all the stuff out for free. But it is what it is. All I can do is offer my support and remind people of my past so I can redirect them towards my future.
That's a great attitude and
So
thought.
that's a lesson I learned from John Romero. John Romero's his memoir is literally called Doom Guy. Quite
You
good, by the
had Yeah, no, you recommended that to me, and you noted when we started talking about doing the interview that it means that you learned from Romero and the
Well, I
lessons
mean,
that you took with
we're
him.
in the era of game designers now, like writing these memoirs. Like Jordan Mechner, Prince of Persia, Karateka, did his, and he did it in a graphic novel format, which was really cool because one of his hobbies, he likes to sit in like cafes in Paris, and he'll just like doodle people that he sees, and he has this kind of really cool little, very simplified but stylized art style, and his was very compelling too. And just I want to see more memoirs out of more creatives in the video game industry because we've seen some stuff. I can tell you that.
I'm anxious to, and I will recommend. I'll use this moment to plug Control Freak. I've read it and listened to the audiobook. Very powerful, emotional.
It's in paperback now.
Hey, I didn't realize that. That's awesome. I have my hardback. I still need to drop by the beer garden in Raleigh and maybe bring you a pen. We'll see.
Karaoke every Monday.
There you go.
Yeah, it's one of those things that with my memoir, like I'm technically still under non-disclosure with Epic and Microsoft, so I had to really pick my battles with the stories that I told.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I went out for dinner and drinks with Dana Cowley, who's one of the main PR people at Epic, and she's like, "I read it. You're fine." I was like, "Okay, cool." And I wanted, like I think I may have told you before, I wanted to make it deeply personal, And instead of making it read like stereo instructions, I wanted your layman to be like, my kid likes video games. This guy made video games. How can I get inside the head of somebody who is involved with all of this? And see why my kid plays freaking Fortnite 24/7.
I was not emotionally ready. I'll just be blunt. I wasn't emotionally ready for what you had gone through in your life and how it informed your work, not just Gears, but Unreal through to the other stuff that you've worked on, including Scrapper. And it was kind of crazy. And so yeah,
Well,
I
I
would recommend
think
it.
I think it's not just pop culture that's grist for the mill. It's life experiences. And whatever you like. Gears of War 1 came out of the fall of my first marriage, and I put that energy and that anger into Gears 1, and I think it kind of came out of it. And I think there's a reason why Gears 3 kind of is cool and badass as it was. The art director Chris lightened things up a little bit. I think he could kind of sense that I was with my forever person Lauren, and I was in a far better place at that point. But I believe that sometimes art is better if the person is suffering, because it kind of becomes like therapy for them, right?
I hate that I fully agree with you. It's
Yeah, I
such a
mean,
brutal reality.
you look at Van Gogh, cutting off his freaking ear, right? Like it's the starving, tortured artist often produces the best work, which is really messed up when you think about it. And that's why I'm happy how Scrapper turned out,
There you
because
go.
that actually came out of the loss of my dog. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm really happy and I want to make new stuff. What's going to happen next? So yeah, quick side note, I'm actually talking to a certain party about possibly making a new game. So I maybe I'm still consulting on some video game stuff, but I might be kind of coming out of retirement in regards to being a game designer and making a whole new thing. So we'll see where that goes.
That's in the early stages, I would imagine. Is there a
Very
timeline that
early.
people would?
I have a slide deck and a design document, so we're talking if at least a few years out. But
Gotcha.
we'll see. It's a really unique idea, so I'm not going to spoil it right now. But let's just say co-op is going to be a big thing.
Okay, then I'll ask you this: is it something you want to do?
Joss Whedon, my friend, who made Buffy and Avengers and everything, he told me one time, don't sit at a table you can't walk away from. And the silver lining of all the COVID BS is that we've learned how to work remotely, and the team that we're talking to is remote. And I have no problem getting on Zoom and chatting. But the thing is doing something new would have to be on my own terms. It wouldn't be like quadruple A as they're all saying right now. It'd probably be like double A, something manageable. Something that just not really a full game as a service. We're having that conversation right now. Go back to just like occasionally having an update with some DLC. Not necessarily seasons and battle passes. Go to YouTube right now and look up battle passes, and the top 5 videos are like why battle passes suck, right? And that's the thing, is because these games have gotten so expensive to make. The publishers and developers have to milk the consumer at any given opportunity, and that's just the reality of the business. Also, you look at inflation, you look at the fact that so many of these developers have mouths to feed with their families, and they deserve to get paid. They work their butts off for what they do. So it's something's got to give, and that's where a lot of the battle passes and seasons stuff has come from. And I hope to return a little bit back to basics. I mean, that was the goal with LawBreakers initially, was to make it just a fun little arena shooter. Which I should have just only hired 20 people and made like kind of like a spiritual successor to UT, kind of like New Blood and Dave Oshry are making these boomer shooters, right? And they're just knocking them out, and it's there's that nostalgia coming back again, right? And see if start small and then walk before you run. And I've made my share of mistakes in my life. It goes back to my whole thing, for my foray into stand-up comedy, and it's you go out and you're gonna bomb. It's going to happen. Is this thing on? That kind of thing, right? And but that's how you learn. My wife videotapes my performances. I watch them. I'm like, oh, okay, that joke landed. That one did not. Let's tune this one. Let's do that. It's just like video games with alphas and betas. Just like the restaurant industry with soft openings, friends and family, things like that. It's just like test screenings with film. All of it. It's just like my first marriage. Everything is iteration.
That's a well-made point. I'm going to loop us back because I have 2 more questions, then I'll stop stealing your afternoon away from you. You touched on this, Cliff. And I wonder if maybe it's not as morbid as some of the self-immolation elements, but what do you hope to see in Gears of War E-Day? Maybe it's not just the brutalities of war, but is there a specific moment or a scene that you hope your characters relive or have? Is there anything in particular you're hoping to see with Gears?
I want to see Marcus and Dom further bond,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, I want to see some of the war from the perspective of a child.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned this in prior interviews. I think it'd be great to not only like once Dom start getting a handle on like, okay, we can murk these locusts. We can, because the first like bit's going to be really, really sloppy, I imagine, right? They're going to have a hard time dealing with the locusts. And that trailer also implies it's going to be a deeper melee system. I don't know if that's actually going to come through in gameplay, but we'll see. But it'd be really, really cool to alternate to a child's perspective, going through E-Day, and just the child can't. All the child can do is like do the whole like throw a rock to just distract a locust and just try and do stealth segments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, the whole cycle of empowerment versus losing that power. I think that could be really, really compelling because to be a child in wartime, I think would be just horrible, like growing up with that. And it's one of those things that, I believe that a good video game like that can go through the cycle of empowerment where once you finally started getting a handle on your power, it's kind of like RPGs where most RPGs you start off and you're the character with all of this cool stuff you'll get later. And then you finish that one opening segment and then you're just the kid in the village. Then you have to build back up to it, right? It's that kind of classic cycle. It's, like everything in life, it's pacing. Pacing is everything. And I hope it's paced well. And there better be multiplayer also. Somebody mentioned that on Steam. It doesn't say it's going to have multiplayer on there. So that scares me because, multiplayer is the long tail of keeping a game alive. Gears 1 almost didn't have multiplayer. And I think that's what actually, helped keep the community going. Because the thing is, if you can shoot a bad guy in a game, you're going to want to shoot your friends.
I was surprised when I saw that multiplayer was removed, and I was just shocked and oddly surprised by it. But I would have to think there's multiplayer. Gears fans, I think, would truly that's a pillar of Gears of War.
Yeah, I mean, but who knows? I mean, Horde mode also. Horde mode saved the franchise because when Gears 2 launched, the versus multiplayer was completely broken. The matchmaking was just hosed. And then people just like, okay, well, I'm just going to do Horde mode. And then Horde mode is hardly a new idea. So many games have had that, before. Galaga was essentially Horde mode. But, we did it really, really well. And it's become a pillar. And then Call of Duty's like, zombies! I'm like, you're welcome.
Well, I have one more question for you, and then I'll open it up for anything else you'd like to say. A question that several in my community have, and it's a fun one, is, are you planning to play Gears of War E-Day on day one? Are you planning to play it at all? Or is that a chapter that's closed enough for now that you don't enjoy playing them?
I'm not playing a lot these days. I'm basically in reading mode. I'm about to pick up Michael Richards' memoir, from Seinfeld to Kramer. Which my writing partner and Control Freak actually partnered with him to do that book, Small World. So I'm playing the Princess Peach game right now on my Switch. The only thing that I want to play right now is everything on my Switch. I want to play the new Prince of Persia. I just, my PlayStation 5 still collecting dust upstairs. And but when Gears of War E-Day comes out, I think I'll definitely be giving that one a go. I started Gears 5, got a couple hours into it, but I've found that the sensitivity and the friction and adhesion and all that, like the core loop of the controls felt a little slippery to me. And that's something I've always been a stickler for. So I didn't really stick with it. I wound up just watching the cutscenes and some certain action moments on YouTube. But I'll definitely be picking up E-Day. I'm happy that, Carlos Ferro and John DiMaggio are, getting more paid gigs because they're some of the hardest working people in the VO biz.
And extremely talented at that.
Oh, and they're really, really good at engaging with the community too. They go to so many conventions. They'll sign all the autographs. And do all of the stuff. And they're just great guys and great actors.
Agreed. I'm thrilled to hear you say that because I agree. Their talent is nearly unmatched, if not unmatched.
I mean, you think about the Dom and Maria scene. And the way Carlos delivered that, like, Marcus, I don't know what to do. And Dom, it's okay. Right. Like that whole back and forth just still to this day gives me goosebumps. And just, in hindsight, it's kind of comedic the way the bolt hog is revealed. Because it's like he's the poor
It's
dude
like huge. Yeah.
The poor dude has to put down his wife, and he's using like, the Dirty Harry pistols to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it is what it is. But I hope Maria gets a little bit more of a screen time. Which I cast Courtney Ford, who's my high school drama friend, who's in Legends of Tomorrow, DC's series.
Oh, cool.
She was in Dexter this season with the Trinity Killer. She's been in a bunch of stuff. She's married to Brandon Routh, who was Superman at one point. And but she, Dom, I made you breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I remember like messaging her like, Courtney, you want to do this? It's only like 3 lines. Can you do this? And she just sped over to the VO booth and did that. And the thing is, knowing how it ends. That's the thing about like, the musical I co-produced, Hadestown, right? We know the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice and how it ends. He turns around and she winds up being sent back down to hell. But they sing it literally in Hadestown on Broadway. They say, but we're going to sing it again. And Titanic is even more impactful when you watch it, because you know what happens. The boat sinks. Tons of people are going to die. And to play this E-Day, and to know, Dom's eventually going to have to kill his wife. He's going to have to sacrifice himself. Anya's going to die. Even Marcus meets Anya in the first Gears, right? But to know all this stuff's going to go down adds this sense of foreboding that I really hope they can kind of double down on. Agreed.
Oh man, there's so many possibilities for E-Day, and I'm grateful to you for taking the time to talk about it. If they gave you a chance to do a small voice line or anything like that, would you do it?
Yeah, sure. I'm down for whatever.
That's cool. I know the fans would enjoy something like that, some small Easter egg and whatnot.
I can do a slightly deep voice when I want to.
There you go, man. There you go. Well, Cliff Bleszinski, the creator of Gears of War, creator of Scrapper, man who worked on Unreal, writer of Control Freak. Thank you for your time today. Please take a moment, talk to people about where they can find your work, plug your stuff, all that stuff.
Everything's on Amazon, and the books are available in fine booksellers worldwide. I like the fact that actual traditional bookstores are kind of coming back. So yeah, you guys have Amazon, you have bookstores. Just ask for it, and we'll see what comes next. I have my create tattoo, and I'm going to keep creating.
Oh goodness, man! I'm so happy for you and excited. Channel member Cheeseworks says congrats on the success of Scrapper, and rest in peace to Ed Piscor. So there you go. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you all for hanging out today. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Cliff, I'll talk to you in a moment. Take care, everybody.
Take care.